everyone, welcome once again to the Pop Culture Yearbook. I'm Captain Logan.
And I'm the real Manos.
Manos and I have taken our time machine. We've gone back in time. Way back in time! Here we were going, okay, and we're there. And Manos, where have we gone?
We have gone back to the wacky year 1958.
1958. Manos, are you ready to hear some things that happened in the year 1958?
Give me a second. Yes.
Okay, thank you for adjusting the flux capacitor. In 1958, NASA was first formed. That was the year that Toyota and Datsun cars first went on sale. Rockefeller was elected governor of New York. The Boeing 707 was first made. Elvis Presley joined the Army. The microchip was invented, and it was also the year that the hula hoop was first invented. Popular films that year included Bridge on the River Kwai, South Pacific, and Vertigo. Popular musicians that year, of course, were Elvis Presley, Frank Sinatra, Ella Fitzgerald, and Miles Davis. Manos, what did you choose for the year 1958?
I choose the film Horror of Dracula. And
wow, I almost picked that. I know I say that every time, but I actually did almost pick that, because I've never seen it, and I thought about watching it, but I went with something else.
That's great. I'm very happy you didn't pick that.
Actually, I did that because I thought maybe you were going to pick it.
Oh, good. I'm glad I'm holding up to my stereotypes. But
oh, that's not what I meant.
No. I love to be consistent. Well, anyway, in case you folks out there have not seen it, it is one of the first Hammer films. I think it was the second one, actually. The first being, obviously, a Frankenstein film, which was made in 1957. And that was such a big hit with Peter Cushing. They went right into the next obvious property, which was Dracula. Now, keep in mind, by the 50s, the Universal series had pretty much, ground to a halt. I think their last films were the Creature films. And after that, they were basically everybody was doing giant bug movies and stuff like that. Because, or the Aliens or something like that. Because, the Red Scare was really huge, of course, in the 50s. And that was pretty much a big thing. And people had gotten less scared and actually, frankly, tired of the Universal style of horror movies. So, as things go in cycles, of course. So after a few years of these films being kind of, these characters being kind of on ice, it was Hammer, British studio, who brought them in. And what they did was they brought a newer, bolder version of these kind of characters. There was a little more sex appeal, there was a little more blood, and it got more and more, actually, as the years went by. But for 58, they were pretty bold films. There was quite a bit of blood. There's quite a bit of blood in, even the early ones, really. The film stars, of course, Christopher Lee as Dracula. Peter Cushing I think he's in almost all of these films, and he stars as Van Helsing. And a favorite of yours, Michael Grove from the Batman movies, the 90s movies.
Wow.
Who played Alfred. He's also in this film.
Who does he play?
He plays Arthur, who is... he is about to get married to Mina. Now, what's interesting is they kind of switch characters a little bit from the book. They have... Renfield isn't in the story at all. But actually what's interesting is, in the book, it's Jonathan Harker, right, who goes to meet Dracula at the beginning of the film. Excuse me, at the beginning of the story. And in the Bela Lugosi version, it's Renfield. But... and actually, Jonathan Harker really doesn't have a big major role at all in the Lugosi film. To be honest, he's just kind of there. But in the beginning of the Horror of Dracula, it's Jonathan Harker who goes to him. He's supposed to be an organizer of his library. And he's greeted by a woman who tells him that Dracula's a really horrible person. He's keeping me here against my will. Help me. And Dracula shows up, and he's very nice and, kind of... He's not overly charming, Christopher Lee, when he's playing the nice guy, just for show. But, he is very cool. And, he tells her to just go away, and she, runs off. And later, Jonathan Harker goes to her, and she wants to get out of there, and he is actually there secretly to kill Dracula on working with Van Helsing. And she turns out to be a vampire, and let's see, Harker kills her but is trapped by Dracula. And then we cut to his home, and his girlfriend isn't Mina in this. I don't know why they switched it. His girlfriend is Lucy instead of Mina.
I'm home.
Yeah, I know. And Arthur is engaged to Mina. I'm not sure why. I've seen in a few productions like switching the characters here and there. I don't know why. I went to see a play of Dracula a couple of years ago, and the roles of Mina and Lucy were switched. Like Mina was killed early, and Lucy was, the lead female. I don't know why. Like some productions have played loose and fast with the character roles, but hey, whatever. And that brings in Michael Groff, who is Arthur, and he's Jonathan Harker's brother, I think, and he's horrified to hear about this. And he's friends with Harker, and he's brothers with Lucy. Excuse me. And Dracula has followed them to England because Harker kills his bride, his vampire bride, and out of revenge, he's going to go get Harker's girl as the replacement, and turns her into a vampire, and she is killed by Van Helsing, and now Dracula is after Mina, and of course the film ends with a big fight between Van Helsing and Lee's Dracula, and there's a pretty spectacular scene where they fight in the castle, and he pulls the drapes off, and he starts to disintegrate. And it's a pretty graphic, disintegration for 58. There's even a great scene where the beam of light hits his foot, and you can see that it's kind of disintegrating into bone and stuff like that, underneath the shoe and the pant. So, what an amazing film! I definitely recommend it for anybody who's a big vampire fan. It's a pretty basic story. Dracula isn't out for anything huge in this film. He's just wants to replace his girlfriend, and he's kind of a thug. Actually, that's the thing. He's really thuggish in the Hammer series. You mess with him once, he spends the whole movie trying to get back at you. And there's several films like that. This film was very popular, and this series ran until the early 70s. Let's see, I think it was 73 or 74 was the last Hammer Dracula. And Lee played most of these films. I think there was one or two where he was absent. There was one, it's weird, I think it's The Brides of Dracula, or something like that. The second one didn't even have Dracula in it. There's another vampire guy, and Helsing fights him, and it's there's no Dracula. It's mentioned, hey, that Dracula was pretty bad. But, that was kind of it. And then, of course, he came back for the third film. And they figured out each new way to resurrect him, because he gets messed up a lot. And what's interesting is his performances in these films are mainly silent. He does have dialogue. He does, talk occasionally. But he's a kind of force of nature. I mean, you can see why he has such popular following. And a lot of horror fans will tell you that, he's pretty competitive with Bela Lugosi as people's favorite Dracula. He's generally kind of thought of as maybe number two. I like him a lot. I also like Gary Oldman's Dracula a lot. But of course, I'm a big Bela Lugosi fan as Dracula. And yeah, what a great film! I highly recommend if you haven't seen it, go check it out. And Christopher Lee, obviously, I mean, a lot of audiences these days know him, just from the last 15 years.
Yeah.
He's had a great third half of his career, actually, where he's been in the Star Wars movies and the Lord of the Rings films, and a few Tim Burton movies. And Tim Burton obviously was a big fan of the Hammer movies. If you've ever seen any, if you're a fan of Tim Burton, you definitely should check the Hammer movies out, because he was a huge fan of them. Actually, Sleepy Hollow I always thought was kind of Tim Burton's tribute to the Hammer movies. They even have Michael Grove. He loved using Michael Grove, and like George Lucas used Peter Cushing and Christopher Lee in his Star Wars films. So yeah, if you watch these movies, you go, oh yeah, that's where they got it.
Well, I heard there were quite a few homages to it in Frankenweenie.
Yeah. Oh well,
Which just came out. Yeah.
Well, Tim Burton is a huge old school horror fan. Right. I mean, he's a big fan of like Vincent Price, and he thankfully at least got to work with him once with Edward Scissorhands, and he loves working with Christopher Lee whenever he can work with him. So yeah, I mean, definitely if you're a fan of stuff like this, you'll definitely dig. I really dig the Dracula movies more than the Frankenstein movies, but that's more because I'm more of a Dracula guy than a Frankenstein guy.
Well, thanks for that, Manos. I need to go back and watch more of those than I've seen. And
these are awesome, yeah, especially if you dig Christopher Lee.
Like I said, I thought very much about watching that one, but I decided to go the sci-fi route because I thought maybe for 58 you'd go more of a horror route. So I did a movie as well. And I did a much lesser known film. You said that your film was really popular, of course. Mine is not. Although I'm surprised that Mystery Science never got a hold of it, or at least as far as I can tell, I didn't see an episode where they'd ever talked about it. The film I'm going to talk about is a little sci-fi film called It: The Terror from Beyond Space. Have you ever heard of this?
I've heard of the film. I've never seen it.
Okay, I decided to bring this up for a couple of reasons, and honestly, it's a short film. It's not a short film, but it's not a very long film. And
like what, 70 minutes?
It's like an hour 10. Yeah, it's like 75 minutes. And I don't have a lot to say on this one, but there are a couple of reasons it's worth bringing up. The first one is because it is apparently the film that they were thinking of when they created Alien. So it was the inspiration for Alien, mostly just because it's a movie about some people on a spaceship that accidentally pick up an alien and it goes around trying to pick them off one by one. That's what it is, and so Alien was inspired by it. The other reason I bring it up is because it was written by Jerome Bixby. And Bixby only wrote 3 other films, including, he was mostly known for novels and short stories, and also for 1 Twilight Zone episode and 4 Star Trek episodes. And that's what I know him from. He wrote my favorite original series episode, Mirror Mirror. He also wrote episodes like By Any Other Name and Requiem for Methuselah. And he wrote the most recent thing he wrote was actually a film he wrote well before he died, and then it got made a lot later in 2007, and that was a little independent film called The Man from Earth with John Billingsley. And if you've never seen that, go on Netflix and watch that. That is a fascinating film. But it's just a bunch of people sitting in a room talking, and it's extremely riveting. But anyway, It: The Terror from Beyond Space is not especially riveting. It starts off okay. It's basically, there's this spaceship that was sent to explore Mars, and they get word back on Earth that there's only one survivor left, this guy named Carruthers, and he managed to survive this big monster attack, but nobody believes that it was a monster. Everybody thinks that he killed them all, and for whatever reason, and that he wanted to, that he panicked and wanted to steal their rations, and apparently all of their rations would have lasted one man 10 years, and they thought he panicked and thought that something was going to happen to them, and so he killed them all. And there's really no evidence that he killed them, but they don't believe that there's a monster, so they, or a creature, whatever it is, on Mars, and so they send out another spaceship to bring him back to be court-martialed. And I thought, it was an interesting premise right out the gate, because you've got this guy who's on the ship with all these other people, and they're all looking at him all shifty-eyed because they think that he killed all these people and pretended it was a monster. And so, but they let him walk freely around the ship, and so there's, if you don't know anything about the movie going in, you kind of wonder, although, with the title, I guess you figure there's no way this guy actually killed them, because the title is called It, and it's not about a giant clown. And like there's a little bit of a mystery build up for a minute of you know, is this guy sane, is he not, and what is the truth. And of course 20 minutes in, you find out that they've accidentally picked up either the same monster or a similar monster, and that's on their ship and is running around killing people, right? So suddenly all the mystery is gone, and Carruthers is at that point just another guy on the ship, because guess his story checks out. Sorry buddy, we really apologize for almost court-martialing you now that 2 of our crew members are dead. And basically the whole rest of the movie is just people running around trying not to die and trying to figure out how to kill this monster. And of course, it's a B movie. It doesn't have the budget that you'd love it to have, and so the creature is not especially scary, and I doubt that he would have been especially scary even in 1958. He's kind of a run-of-the-mill, like kind of pseudo King Kong looking thing with these giant hands and big and you know, big creepy feet or whatever. And he's just this big hairy black, you know, monster thing, and he just goes around the ship killing people and sucking their all the water out of their bodies. So he's basically Nancy the Salt Vampire from original series Star Trek, except he doesn't suck salt, he sucks water, and he can't shapeshift. I guess there's that part. So anyway, one of the things that cracks me up about this film is that it's called The Terror from Beyond Space, because it's not from beyond space, it's on Mars. Like, I kind of wondered about it. I mean, like, I guess in 58, there not having been as many, you know, science fiction films as now, I mean, maybe the idea is just that it's beyond the space that Earthmen had traveled so far, you know what I mean? And so, like, but I don't know, it seems like with a title like that, at the very least, like, I wouldn't expect, like, something interdimensional or something, but like, you would at least expect it to be maybe further than Mars, you know, like maybe it's from a place that these films haven't ventured yet, because even by 58, Manos, how many films do you think had already had gone to Mars and had Martians by this point, right? That was always the fallback.
Yeah, I mean, it was the easy, you know, you're right, like a fallback. Like so many movies, we're very curious about Mars, and Mars was often thought of as the next obvious place, and you know, it was further enough away to be mysterious. And you know, it's interesting. I'm sure you've kind of learned this by just casual researches. You notice how big and long and dramatic the names of sci-fi films were back then?
Oh yeah, well, they all had some kind of a subtitle.
They always had some kind of subtitle. The words from outer space were in like a few of them.
Right.
And you know,
they
were
always had
big,
an exclamation point someplace.
Yeah, it's like the whole movie is like, you know, the title, and they don't really do that anymore. Sci-fi films or, you know, fantasy films or something like that, when they come out, they're usually shorter titles, and they're not like sentences, basically. I
really appreciated that back in the early 2000s when we got Sky Captain and The World of Tomorrow. Yeah. That was a great title.
Isn't that great? And that was, of course, well, it was a retro film.
It was homaging these sorts of movies, yeah.
Yeah. And, of course, it has Angelina Jolie as Nick Fury.
Yeah, that's actually true. I wish they'd just called her that.
Yeah, she was Nick Fury before Samuel Jackson.
And it had those great robots from the Superman Fleischer cartoon.
I know.
They just ripped them straight off the page, and yeah, I really enjoy that movie. Anyway, I'm talking
she even had a helicarrier.
Yeah, that's true. Wow, I never thought of that. Hold on. Yeah, that's great, Manos. Yeah, that's hilarious. Well, anyway, so back to it, The Terror from Beyond Space. This movie has mostly just a bunch of interchangeable characters. That's why I'm not talking about anybody really beyond Carruthers, because he's the interesting person for 20 minutes, and then he kind of recedes into the rest of the crew. Except that he's the guy... I'm sorry, what?
Do you think it would have been more interesting if they had killed Carruthers off?
Yeah, very possibly, because then people would have felt bad. You know, they would have had to have kind of dealt with the kind of, you know, morality of wow, we just made these assumptions about this guy we didn't really know all that much about, and turns out he was right, and you know, and then they would have had to have used that as motivation to then, you know, they would have more of a motivation to kill the monster beyond just their own, lives, you know, just trying to save themselves. Yeah.
And it maybe would have created a lot of tension because, like, oh, great, the guy who may have known something to help us is dead.
Yeah, that too. Good point. And if they'd kept the monster maybe a little bit more in the background and stuff, it would have been like, wow, well, if he didn't do it, then who did? Like, it'd make him the first person that gets killed off, right? And then it's like, oh, God, oh, it wasn't him after all, because he's dead now, you know? Yeah, that would have been really interesting. Most of the movie is just them going around trying to find ways to kill the monster. And so, you know, they try electrocution, and they try gas, and by the end, and honestly, for my money, the way that they killed him wasn't even all that clever, because it was kind of the first thing I thought of, but again, maybe in 1958 it wasn't the first thing you'd think of. By the end, it was just, oh, I guess he needs oxygen. So we'll decompartmentalize the ship and all put on spacesuits, and luckily they had enough spacesuits for everybody. I thought that it would have been cool if that had been a plot point, where if because they never said this. If somebody had said, hey, you know, now that this certain amount of people are dead, we have enough spacesuits to all put on these spacesuits, and then like take out the airlock, right? Like what if it had been like, well, we want to try this, but somebody would die if we did, so we haven't tried it yet. It was just like Carruthers is the most important thing he does is he's the guy who comes up with, oh, maybe he needs air to breathe. So when you get to the end of it, you know, he's kind of the hero of the piece for no reason other than, you know, he was the guy who everybody thought killed people, so I guess he deserves to be the hero of the story. But I don't know, it's just like I felt like there were a lot of missed opportunities with this premise, and a lot of them were filled by Alien, really. But yeah, that's really all I have to say about it. Well, the other thing too is it is kind of interesting that this movie is all about a group like NASA sending out a spaceship when it's the year NASA was created. I think that's kind of cool.
Yeah.
But anyway, so that's about all I had to say about It, the Terror from Beyond Space. Except just wanted to say that again because
what year was the movie supposed to take place in?
You ready for this? 1973.
Yeah. Oh man.
So anyway, isn't that interesting?
That's great.
That was.
I love the future in old movies.
I love the future in old movies that already happened before I was born. That's
it's really
that's
cool.
fantastic. It's like, wow, you guys went to Mars before I was born. I don't know, it's just if you're making a movie in 1958, you gotta push it forward a little farther than 1973. Like, I guess that was the optimism of the time, though, right? Like, you know, there's a space program that's looming, and we think maybe we're gonna go to space. 58, like I said, is the year the microchip was made. I mean, there had to have been a lot of optimism for technology at this point in time.
Yeah, and keep in mind, this is a few years before Kennedy even made that statement that we were going to go to the moon.
Right.
So, and, you know, people are like, we ain't going to do that in, like, a few years.
Yeah.
And then we did. So, yeah, I guess, you know, they hadn't anticipated us getting there so quick. Or at least to the moon, anyway.
Well, Manos, let's go ahead and take our time machine and come back to 1973. I mean, 2012.
Whoops.
I think we've done that one, haven't we?
We have done 73, actually.
Manos, where are we going to go next time?
We are going to go even further back to 1941.
Wow, 41. Are you anticipating difficulty in choosing something?
No.
Oh, all right. Well, that's that 1941 optimism there, Manos.
That's right.
Or at least that 1958 optimism that you picked up while you were in 58 and then took with you to 1941.
It's a common occurrence among time travelers. You pick up the optimism of the times past. Yes.
Well, I think everyone could use a little bit of that. So that's why we do it. We try to bring forward some optimism.
That's right.
Well, everybody, thanks a lot for watching the Pop Culture Yearbook. Sure hope you enjoyed it. We'll see you in a couple weeks with 1941. I'm Captain Logan.
And I'm the real Manos.
We'll see you next time.